Hello and welcome to NavTalk. NavTalk is proudly brought to you by the Navwealth Financial Group, helping you reach your destination in life on purpose. My name is Simon Prowse and I'll be your regular host for this series of podcasts. And I look forward to bringing you interviews and content on a broad range of topics. Topics that will be educational, inspirational, informative and at times fun. Well, hello everyone and welcome to today's NavTalk entitled The Art of Retiring. It's all in the planning. My guest today is Stuart Hollman. Stuart is a financial planner and a former director of Navwealth Financial Group. Welcome, Stuart.
Thanks, Simon.
Stuart has a Bachelor of Business degree, majoring in finance from University of Technology, Sydney. Leaving uni in 1993, Stuart took up a cadetship with the Commonwealth Bank in project management. I think at the time, Stuart, you were setting up call centres, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Call centres were a new phenomenon for banks. They were moving away from branches, and so they were trying to get big into call centres because it was a significant reduction in their cost structure.
Oh, interesting. And then from there, you saw the calling of financial planning, had a brief interlude at Citibank, doing another call centre, and then took up your calling and in 2001 started working as an employed financial planner with AMP.
Yeah, that's right. I really enjoyed the project management work, but I had a finance degree and I knew that degree probably had a limited time frame in terms of when it could open doors for me. So I got to the stage where I looked into, what type of area did I want to work in finance, and financial planning was one that struck me because it was something that allowed me to delve into my passion of finance, but at the same time help people in their lives.
And from there in 2001 through to 2004-05, you sort of built up your skills and your kit bag, and then went and joined Navwealth in 2005.
Yeah, correct. Funny story, actually, in terms of how I joined with Navwealth and Craig Banning. When I started as an employed planner with AMP in 2001, all the new planners at that stage went to listen to a talk, and it was a talk by a more experienced planner, which was Craig Banning. My whole goal for getting into financial planning was to help people by doing what I would call proper financial planning, full financial planning, in terms of setting goals, checking into those goals, and over time working towards those goals. And back then, a lot of financial planners were very transactional based. They would, set up a super fund or set up an insurance policy. And when I heard Craig, I went home that night to my wife and I said, I just found the guy that I want to work with. Because Craig, even back then, was all about fee for service, about proper financial planning, advice, relationships. And then about 4 years after that time, I ran into Craig at an industry function, and it just happened that he was looking to build his business and I was looking to move away from being by myself, and our worlds collided.
And you mentioned that at the time you enjoyed the way Craig's approach to financial planning was all about goal setting and strategies around that. Is that really the art of financial planning and the way you see it and why you got there into the industry? Yeah,
absolutely. That's exactly how I see it. The same methodology we use now, which is called values-based financial planning, which is all around getting to understand the clients, where they're at in their lives, what motivates them, what they're trying to achieve, and then building the financial strategy around that. To this day, that's how we still do things at Navwealth.
It's interesting you're talking about Craig, Stuart, because you are a planner in your own right and very good at it. You have a number of clients that speak very highly of you with your planning advice. And you've picked today's topic around retiring and the art of retiring. Why is that so important, you think, or what's it mean? Yeah,
I think all of the work we do in financial planning is generally targeted towards retirement. That's the idea of all the hard work, when you might be starting off and you're young and you're scraping together enough money to go out on the weekends, and then you might build and you start a family and you've got children and you might have a mortgage and all that hard work that we do in the planning side of things, which might involve, paying for insurances that no one wants to pay for insurances, funding kids' education, paying off debt to build assets. That's all the hard yards, with really the main aim trying to get to a stage where I think you can retire and have a great retirement. So I see the retirement as the fun part of what we do and the fun part of all the planning, which is why I think it's an interesting topic to talk about.
So it's a bit of a holy grail of what you're trying to achieve, I suppose. But it's interesting, you talk about retiring like it's the finality. It's really not, is it?
Totally not, especially these days with life expectancy so long. Quite often you can cease your normal job, cease work, and still have 30 or 40 years of life. So it's just really a change in what you do. And I think what we see in terms of clients we see that have really successful retirements is, yes, they don't see it as necessarily stopping work, putting their feet up and not doing anything again. They just see it as a bit of a change in direction. And the really successful clients that have great retirements are people that keep themselves very occupied and have all new activities or different things that they do in that next phase of their life.
So it's really not about stopping, it's actually the next phase. It's all about the change of direction, if you like.
100%. And even that part takes planning. I think a lot of clients that I see that do that really well, as they lead up towards, call it retirement, but ending their normal work life, will start planning, okay, what do I want to do next? Is it to work in a charity? Is it to be involved in kids' sport or start a new hobby, learn the piano, whatever it might be? But they start thinking about that, so as they move into that next phase of their lives, they can jump into it straight away and they've got direction.
So it's not all about the finances and how much money's in the bank. There's a lot more to this process. Massively
a lot more. Things like health, which you obviously to a degree cannot control, but there's family, friends, hobbies, pastimes, work, whatever you want to do. There's a massive amount that goes into retirement. I think the financial side of things is important in that it will allow or not you to live the type of life you want to live in retirement. So still very, very important, but only one facet of the overall journey. So in terms of planning then, when do we start this retirement planning, if you like, or when do we start this process? Good question. I think the earlier the better is probably the general answer. But in saying that, there is a time generally in lives where you don't have much capacity to do much more than you're already doing from a financial perspective. And what I mean by that is if you're early to mid 30s, have children that you're wanting to put through education, secondary school, and you've got a mortgage that you're kind of using all your cash flow to pay off, and one of your partners is not working because they're raising kids or working in a reduced capacity, the sweet spot is probably as you get to a stage where perhaps the expenses are getting less in the family, the kids might be getting through towards the end of school, you've got the mortgage under control, which I guess is generally somewhere kind of mid to late 30s, and you've got some headspace to start thinking about retirement, and you've got some ability from a financial perspective to start allocating resources to your retirement.
And when you're saying allocated resources, what are we doing in terms of the allocation and how we're looking at that? Yeah,
so I guess for in Australia, the superannuation system really is the holy grail, or tax nirvana, if you like, for someone retired. Because once you're retired in Australia, have money in superannuation that you're living off and are over age 60, it's a tax-exempt environment. So there's no income tax, there's no withdrawal tax, there's no capital gains tax. So ideally what we want to start doing at that stage is starting to look at, okay, how much have we got in superannuation and how can we maximise what we've got in superannuation to get as big a portion of possible of our clients' assets in that superannuation pool, which is going to give them tax-free income in retirement.
And in terms of the nirvana and super, I get it. Is there a specific number, or is there something where you say, you've made it type thing?
Of course, that varies client to client, depending on how much they want to have to live off during retirement. At the moment, the government's introduced some rules that maximise how much you can have in that tax-free environment in superannuation, that's now set at 1.7 million per person. So as a couple, you could have up to 3.4 million, and that would be totally tax-free for you. But there's a lot of restrictions on how much you can actually put into superannuation, which comes back to why it's important to start early. because with the current rules on superannuation in Australia, there's no way you can, 1 or 2 or even 3 years before you decide to retire, start concentrating on, okay, let's get some money into superannuation, let's plan for our retirement, what's the optimal setup for retirement. That's got to be done many years in advance because of the restrictions on actually putting money into superannuation.
Right. So in terms of the 1.7 million, that's 3.4 with a couple, it is quite a big number. Is that the maximum we can get into super, or can we put more in? It's just the benefits are at 1.7.
Correct, yeah. You can't have any more than that in the tax-free side of things, but you can have more in superannuation. Superannuation, not to bore everyone, is broken into 2 phases. One is the accumulation phase, when you're working and adding money to it, and one is the pension phase, once you've retired and you're drawing that money out to live off. The 1.7 is the most you can have in the pension phase, but you can have any amount in the accumulation phase, which it's still taxed concessionally. It's just not tax-free like the pension phase is.
Okay, so the government sort of said 1.7 per person's enough to retire on, in their view, and that probably keeps someone's head above water. In your world and what you've seen, is 1.7 generally enough?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes down to the lifestyle that people want to live, and that's why we spend a lot of time with clients getting them to really think about what they want their retirement to look like, to paint that picture so we can, determine, what do you want to do during retirement? What are your hobbies going to be? Are they expensive? Are they not? When you travel, is it going to be a lot of travel? Is it first class? Is it economy class? So we can work out, okay, how much does this particular client need every year to live off in retirement? And so generally I would say, yes, 1.7 would be enough, but it is a case-by-case scenario.
And how do you work that out when you're working with a client and they sort of say, well, I want to have a first-class holiday and I want this car on this year and whatever. How do you do that?
So the first part of that is just to get them to actually work out the budget, which is not a very exciting job. Not many people like to do it, but actually sitting down and we give clients a template for a budget which says, how much do you spend on food every week, hairdressing, petrol, insurance, and then how's that all going to change once you're retired? So it's a really important piece of the puzzle. So we know how much we need to fund every year. And once we know that, we can work backwards to say, okay, well, if your plan is to retire at age 58 as an example, and you need $100,000 a year to live off, indexed for inflation, we can work out then how much that equates to in terms of a lump sum that they need to have in super or other areas to be able to fund that. And then a really good part of what we do, which a lot of clients get a lot of value from, is we model their financial future out. So we can look at things like cash flow, tax, asset longevity, debt repayment from now through until their life expectancy, basically. So we can say to a client, okay, the way things are going, if we keep going on the strategy that we're following, and you need, as an example, $100,000 per annum to live off once you retire at age 58, this is how long your money's going to last. And that then allows the client to say, okay, well, that looks good to me. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable looking at retiring at 58. Or they may say, it's cutting things a bit tight. Maybe I've got to work till 60 or 62, or maybe I've got to reduce how much I want per year to live off. Maybe that 100,000 is too much. So it allows a client to be educated around their financial future and therefore make decisions that hopefully lead them to living the life in retirement they want to be able to live.
So this model sounds really important and like a big deal. Is it something that you spend a lot of time on in the process? Absolutely,
yeah. It's a big part of what we do. Obviously, from our perspective, from a financial planner's perspective, we have a level of care or due diligence we need to go through to make sure that what we're recommending to clients in terms of their strategy to follow is going to allow them to achieve their goals or not. And if it's not, then we talk with that client about, okay, what can we adjust to address that situation. One of their big things is, Stu, we just don't know how we're placed. We think we're going okay, or maybe we're behind the 8 ball, but we just don't know. And that model, we base it on really conservative assumptions in terms of rates of return and income growth and all that stuff. So it gives them a really clear indication or picture based on the assumptions that we use of what their financial future might look like. Knowing whether that's good or bad news, at least they know where they are at. And if they've started early enough, then we can look at making changes to address any deficits that might be showing.
So you'll use this model throughout your journey with the client and regularly check back in. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, yeah. And that, again, one of the reasons I first started with Craig was that whole process that we go through. So I think a lot of financial planners do a great job of initial advice and strategy, but where I think a lot of them fall down is not checking back into that. So we're very big here on, setting those targets initially and then checking in at every review to say, okay, how have we gone? Are we ahead of target? Are we behind a target? And then adjusting things as we go. And of course, people's lives change over that period. A lot of clients I've had here at Navwealth, I've had for 15 years now. So they go through a lot of life events, and the goals that they had right at the beginning are more than likely are going to have changed. Tax law will have changed. Superannuation law will have changed. So I think if we're not checking in regularly and adjusting things as we go, then the likelihood of a client getting the outcome they want to get is reduced. So I think that's a huge part of.
Wow. So there's an awful lot on the financial stuff, and it sounds like the modelling really brings that together and gives someone, a real script or budget, if you like. I hate to say budget, to work to.
Yeah, a plan. Yeah.
Financial. Yep. Talk a bit more about this non-financial stuff. There's a lot that goes into that as well, yeah? Yeah,
absolutely. I think, what I see and what the other advisors here at Navwealth see with clients that are living a great life in retirement is, yes, they've got the financial means to do what they want to do, but there's it's like anything in life. You get out of it what you put in. And the clients that are doing really well put a lot of energy into their retired life. So what I mean by that is they'll have, they won't have a blank diary. They're not waking up every morning thinking, what are we going to do today? I always think, when I'm thinking of retirement, of a client of mine who every time I see him has a beaming smile on his face, and he just says to me every time, Stuart, I just love this retirement. This is fantastic. I wish I could have done it earlier. And the reason he's so happy is because he stays super active. He's trying new hobbies. Like he always wanted to learn to play the guitar, so he's doing that. He's thinking of learning a language. He's playing soccer a couple of times a week. He's playing golf 2 times a week. So he's set himself up financially to be able to do these things, but he's putting the effort and the energy in to make sure he's got a busy life, a full calendar. Because I think, particularly if you retire early like this gentleman did, one of the pitfalls is that all your other friends, if they're at the same age, are probably still working. So you could easily find yourself kind of in a lonely, what am I doing type situation, but he's been really good in terms of putting the energy into his life to make sure that he stays really busy, he stays really engaged. He is fantastic at conversing with kind of all generations, so he's open to change. He's takes on change of technology and IT, and I think that open-mindedness and willingness to try new things and adapt and not just retire in the old sense of the word where you just kind of put the slippers on and sit on the lounge and start to cruise towards the end of your life. He's really, as we said before, it's just a different chapter of his life where he's putting as much energy into it as he did in his working life. He's reaping the benefits.
Do you typically find these retirees, be they individual or a couple, will establish like a bucket list and get on to those type of things? Is that
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of people do that. And whether it's kind of they do it formally or just in the back of their head, I think, as we said before, retirement is, the good part of all the financial planning leading up to that, all the hard work. So, going to places in the world that they wanted to do, trying things that they always thought they'd want to try, and now they've got the time to do it. So as long as they've got the financial resources to allow them to do that, then go for it.
Do you find in your meetings when you are sitting down with retirees, given what I'm hearing, they must be quite enjoyable, and when you're going through what they've been up to and
Absolutely, yeah. Seeing a client come back from a trip to a place that they never thought they'd get to go to, or then they've always dreamed of going to, or trying a new hobby or sport, even simple things like spending time with their grandkids that they probably didn't have time to do, and watching them grow, spending time with friends. A lot of them get called into babysitting, which some like more than others, but I think, again, gets them to be able to spend precious time with their family, which is always puts a smile on people's face.
So in summing up, retirement is not a stop of your life; it's a change. And what would be the key takeouts, if you like, Stu, in what you'd say to anyone listening to this?
The earlier you can start, and if you're getting advice, I think that's a really important part. Make sure that you're getting advice, because the superannuation landscape and tax landscape and investment markets are all complicated, and people don't know what they don't know. So I think starting early, getting advice, and then, like anything in life, again, the more you put in, the more you get out. So, being committed to that plan, sticking to it and building your wealth over time. And then I guess part of that process is then really having a good think about what you want your retirement to look like. And if you can paint that picture pretty well, and you have an advisor that can help you along the way, then you've got a far better chance of being able to live that life you want to live in retirement.
Oh, fantastic. And I suppose last but not least in all that, Stu, is build that bucket list and really start ticking off all the things you want to do.
Absolutely. You've done all the hard work, so go out there and enjoy it as much as you can.
Fantastic. Well, Stu, thanks for checking in with us today at NavTalk, and we really appreciate your time and look forward to catching up in the future.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us today for NavTalk. You can listen to other podcasts in the NavTalk series via YouTube or where you get your favourite podcasts, or simply search NavTalk. Be sure to follow Navwealth on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. And please, if there are any particular topics you would like us to cover for a future episode, let us know via our website. I'm Simon Prowse. Until we talk again.